This show is proudly brought to you by www.maximusmark.com and Enterprise Fitness. Hi folks, it's Maximus Mark, and welcome to the show that punches you in the face with information, but in a good way. It's Maximus Radio, and today's guest is Brad Kearns. Brad is a noted speaker, author, and coach in health and fitness worldwide for over 2 decades. During his 9-year career as a triathlete, he's one of the world's top-ranked professionals, amassing over 30 wins worldwide on the pro circuit. Career highlights include a remarkable streak of winning 7 victories in a row, a World Duathlon Series Championship, 2 National Triathlete Championships, and ranking number 3 in world ranking in 1991. Brad has authored How Lance Does It, How Tiger Does It, Breakthrough Triathlon Training, and was a supporter writer to Marxison's Primal Blueprint. So in other words, today we have something very special, as always. Welcome, Brad, to the show, and let's get on with the very first question. And just so you've authored both How Lance Does It, How Tiger Does It, Breakthrough Triathlon Training, and you were supporter writer to Marxison's Primal Blueprint, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
So what type of work did you do with Mark?
Oh, well, we've been friends for a long time, and he brought me along to help work on the first book, The Primal Blueprint, with him.
Yeah.
So, we've been collaborating now for 3 years and have a couple other books in the works, and it's gone great. It's been a wonderful movement that Mark's led, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
That's awesome. So how did you get into writing and teaching health?
Oh, well, I was a professional triathlete for 9 years and competed on the circuit, and during that time I liked to exercise my brain too, so I did some writing for the magazines, and then I wrote a sort of an autobiography of my experiences pursuing a career as a triathlete, and had a lot of fun with that. So I've been doing it for quite a long time, and always a part of the athletic world, first as an athlete and then staying in it and working in marketing for companies that sponsored me and so forth.
That's awesome. So for newbies to the paleo lifestyle, what is it and how would one get involved?
Oh, gee, it's easy to get involved. I mean, there's some great resources. Obviously, Mark's Daily Apple is a good place to start with an informative article every day and tons of archives that have, I think there's a tab on the homepage for beginners or getting started and just learning the basics. But if you understand the basic premise, it's pretty easy to take off from there and kind of reflect on all the ways that we've gone wrong in modern society with our diet and even our exercise methods, as well as the hectic, stressful pace that we live at. So the primal theme is to sort of go back to our hunter-gatherer background that we've operated at for 2 million years and kind of model those lifestyle behaviors and adapt them into the realities of modern life.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the questions I guess I have about paleo lifestyles is, one of the big movements is that we should avoid all grains as they are poisons, but surely these plants were available to our ancestors and would have been eaten in very small amounts and quantities. So do you think there's a need to completely eliminate them, or can we have a little bit of them here and there?
Well, I think one thing that I appreciate about Mark's voice with this movement is he tries to paint the picture that you don't need to do anything and you don't need anybody telling you what to do as an adult human in the free world. So the best place to start from, the best mindset is to reflect on how things are working for you and notice some of the shortcomings of modern life where a very common one is people carry excess body fat despite devoted efforts, or in many cases not devoted efforts, not doing a very good job at all. But even the people that try to do the right thing, try to eat what we're told is healthy and exercise properly, are still carrying excess body fat, still suffering from nagging health problems that can likely be tied to the modern diet, which is probably one of the biggest variables we have as far as how to take care of our health. So the grain issue, which is truly controversial and the kind of a sticking point for people because it goes against what we've been told our entire life is healthy. But the rationale for that is that grains have been around as long as civilization, which is about 10,000 years ago when things started to transition across the globe from hunter-gatherer lifestyle to civilization, cultivation of grains and livestock and so forth. So poison's a pretty strong word, but you could call it a slow poison because it's really, we're not genetically adapted to consume these foods, and the main reason being that they stimulate wildly excessive insulin production from what our genes are used to for 2 million years. So grain is a high-carbohydrate food coupled with the processed sugars that we've been eating for the past 100 years. So we have grains for 10,000 years, and we have processed sugar and sweetened beverages and things like that only in the last few generations. And together they combine to overstress the body's very delicate hormonal mechanism that regulates blood sugar, and that is the hormone insulin primarily. So when you consume a carbohydrate food and elevate your blood glucose, you get a sudden rush of energy, but it's a very difficult thing for the body to handle on a repeated or a chronic basis, because throughout our existence we never had access to sugars or even something as concentrated in carbohydrate as a grain.
So in the hunter-gatherer society there really was no access to grains, is what you're saying?
They hunted animals and they gathered for wild plants, vegetables, and seasonal fruits, in some cases if they were lucky with their latitude and their conditions. But over history of human evolution, 2 million years, the average daily carbohydrate intake was 100 grams or less.
Yeah. And
today we go anywhere from triple to 6 times that, depending on how diligent we are about our diets, or how much exposure we have to modern foods, sweets, and things like that.
Yeah, and just so the listeners know, I'm definitely an advocate of getting rid of the grains out of your diet. It's probably one of the smartest things you can do. I know I definitely go grainless, and I feel great from it. But thank you for that answer. It is probably one of the best answers I've heard, is to reflect on what you're doing now, and is it working for you? And if it's not, well, then start asking questions. So a question that I have as well, noticing, it's hard not to go on your website and notice, you're very heavily involved in endurance exercise, like endurance type of sports, like your triathlons, your duathlons, and all that type of thing, and have been ranked, very highly in the world doing those things. So exercise intensely for short intervals is, I guess, the more of the paleo approach with things. Yet we would have, the Primal Man. Did the Primal Man have, periods where they did do long endurance type of events for very intense periods of physical activity, either while being hunted or gathered? So surely as humans, what I guess I'm saying is having the capacity for long endurance sessions of intensity physical activity, isn't there an occasion where we should actually do longer and more endurance type of exercise?
Hey, that's a nice long question. I appreciate that. And, again, you come out with this concept of what we should do, and I think the number one thing we should do is things that are fun and enjoyable and satisfying to us. So I got a lot of reward and enjoyment out of pursuing endurance sports, but upon reflection in my 9-year career as a professional, and as you know, Mark Sisson has endurance background also, you look back and you realize that, boy, the compelling goal of competing on the starting line can wash out your health in many cases, and this is true for all the sports. Footy players or whatever you call them, and every other sport, athletes push it to the very edge and a lot of times compromise their health, and especially in endurance sport, the general approach of chronic accumulation of mileage or whatever the performance standard is can compromise your health because of the chronic nature of it. So to get back to the part of your question, trying to keep pace with you there, in the primal times, humans were called upon for heroic endurance feats, and one of my favorite modern examples, if you can search on YouTube for a documentary called The Last Dance. It's about an hour long, and it's one of the only persistence hunts ever filmed by modern hunter-gatherers, the Bushmen in the Kalahari Desert. And these guys tracked down an antelope, I believe, for about 4 hours, covered somewhere around 30K and 120-degree heat in the desert, and finally the antelope collapsed and died of exhaustion after these guys tracked it to its death. So that's a great example of they're hungry, they're hunting down an animal, and they're performing a magnificent endurance feat, the contradiction or the contrast to today is that the athlete will go out and run a marathon or whatever their ultimate endurance achievement is, and then they'll get right back out there and sign up for another one in a few weeks' time. Or the cyclists in the Tour de France are getting on their bike the very next day and going mad out for 4 or 5 hours. And that's where the problem arises, is in the changing from intermittent stressors, which can strengthen the body, build your resilience, build your muscles up, build your endurance up, and transitioning from that to a chronic approach where then you go into a breakdown phase where your muscles are breaking down, your immune system is breaking down because you're trying to accumulate a certain weekly mileage standard that the conventional wisdom and the notions that are popular in endurance training, you're trying to follow what people are telling you in that sense.
Wow. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So once, like, I guess just on your point about, the Last Dance, that documentary where they do actually hunt, I definitely want to ask this question now because it's very relevant to what you just said, So they've hunted, they've killed the antelope, they've killed the beast. So once the primal man, developed the tools to bring down those large game type of animals, like, as you said, the antelope, they would kill it, and obviously they would feast on it, because they couldn't exactly refrigerate the animal by any means. So they would sit around, eat, and basically gorge themselves. So does the human body have an inherent capacity for overeating?
It has an inherent capacity to store fat and also to access stored body fat and burn it. So the primal human relied on that for quite extensively for 2 million years because food supply was very scarce and very difficult. So today, mostly what we're doing is tapping into our ability to store body fat and not very good at accessing and burning it. And so you have people that even with extreme training regimens of 10 hours a week, 15 hours a week, what have you, still carrying excess body fat, which is sort of improbable to me until you go in and realize what's going on, and that is a diet that's wildly excessive in insulin production. So the bloodstream is constantly elevated with insulin, which is a storage hormone, so it prevents you from accessing and burning stored body fat because you're busy metabolizing the high carbohydrate foods that you eat. So when you look at grains and there's the pros and cons argument saying these foods have some nutritional value, especially whole grains, and there's a lot of recommendation to transition from refined grains to whole grains. But if you look at a bigger picture and take a few steps back, any vegetable, fruit, or animal product is vastly superior in nutrition if you center your diet on those products and get rid of the products that are more harmful than good. So if you have a plate of brown rice and you're looking at the amino acid profiles and the fiber that you get from it and the purported benefits, you have to weigh that against how much insulin your body has to produce to digest that, and therefore putting you into this what we now call the carbohydrate paradigm. In other words, our carbohydrate-driven metabolism in modern times is probably the most health-compromising element of what the modern diet's all about. So you're eating carbs, you're getting an appetite, you're getting droopy energy because of the blood sugar crash from insulin, craving more carbohydrate or predominantly carbohydrate foods, and going on this cycle throughout the day and leaving your body fat storage untapped. Whereas the primal man, for a couple million years, primary energy source was stored body fat. Insulin levels were low because there wasn't a lot of carbohydrate intake, and that enabled easy access and mobilization of stored body fat for energy and for survival. So whether they feasted on the animal for 3 days at a time and then didn't have anything going for the next 2 weeks, or had very, very minimal carbohydrate intake if they lived at high latitudes and so forth, their body could manufacture carbs internally to keep their brain sugar regulated and all the instant needs that your body requires, such as short bursts of energy require glucose to burn. And all that stuff happened quite elegantly in an internal mechanism, such as gluconeogenesis and ketosis that the hardcore readers might be familiar with from reading the book. But it's quite a transition from an energy system that's based on ingesting food rather than tapping into your own stored body fat.
Yeah, great answer. So, I mean, you probably get this, as I do, this question all the time. And, I try and educate my listeners as much as possible about this issue, but I still get the same question all the time. How many times a day, and I know you're going to hate this word, but how many times a day should we eat?
Oh, again, I'm not going to say should to anybody out there, especially in Australia, because you guys are free thinking. And
that's the one.
It's the wonderful thing is getting back to your natural appetite and paying more attention to what your body really needs and requires when you treat it properly and when you balance your hormones primarily by moderating your insulin production. So if you have a new listener or someone who's dabbling in it or what have you, the primary takeaway thought is to regulate the insulin production by getting rid of these processed carbs that are eaten in such excess, such as sugar, sweetened beverages, and grains. So once you do that, even if you try it for a couple weeks, let's say, and try to go on, more emphasis on vegetables and fruits, animal products, meat, fish, fowl, eggs, nuts and seeds, things like that, what's going to happen to your body is without that wildly excessive insulin production, you're going to have regulated energy levels. You're not going to have the ups and downs that occur when you eat high carbohydrate meal, get a blood sugar spike, and then have insulin come in and wash out your blood of all that sugar and put you in a sort of a crash situation where you crave more quick energy.
Yeah, precisely. Now, another thing that I'd say to my listeners and readers is that there's no such thing as a missed meal. You know, as you said before, the hunter-gatherer, would go sometimes 3 days without eating, and then, would obviously find food and then eat. So, what's your take? Is there such thing as a missed meal? Is that a myth in fitness?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it's really important to distinguish the difference between, let's say, going into a primal lifestyle where you're making an attempt and sticking with it for at least 3 weeks to allow your body to transition over to becoming a fat-burning mechanism. If you're a hardcore primal person, you've been doing it for a month, 6 months, a year, it's no problem to skip a meal because you've transitioned into burning stored body fat primarily for energy and being efficient with gluconeogenesis, which is the conversion of protein into sugar to stabilize blood sugar levels. All those things happen very naturally and very efficiently as they have for 2 million years. Mm-hmm. If you've been eating the Western diet, the modern Western diet, we call it the standard American diet, SAD, the SAD diet. If you've been eating that way and your body for years, decades, whatever it is, has become heavily reliant on ingested carbohydrates for energy, you're going to have a very big problem skipping even one meal. And I know that from my days as a triathlete. If I skip breakfast, I start to feel dizzy around 10 a.m. because I was burning so many calories with, you could probably say, an ill-aligned training regimen for my health, and I was eating constantly carbohydrates throughout the day and day after day and week after week. So my body really noticed it and had a very difficult time skipping meals. So I wouldn't want someone to plunge into this and say, well, I'm going to try the primal thing and skip meals and wait till I'm hungry because you're going to get famished and you're going to overeat, and it's not going to be very successful. So I'd say the first thing to do would be to consume a primal meal. Let's say when you start your day with breakfast, when I started this transition myself over 3 years ago, I started out with a big giant omelet. So I had 4 or 5 eggs and vegetables and avocado and had a very filling, delicious morning meal that stabilized my energy levels for hours afterwards because I didn't have a blood sugar spike, in contrast to, let's say, my typical morning meal, which would be a bowl of cereal with some juice, with some toast or whatever, and put a big surge of carbohydrate into my bloodstream, and consequently the insulin comes in, and over the next few hours I start to feel tired and crave more carbohydrate. So that's the first step, really, as your first question of the show started out, is how do you get started with this? I would say take your next meal and make it a primal meal. Follow the primal guidelines of no grains, no sugars, and a heavy emphasis on vegetable, plants, fruit, meat, fish, fowl, eggs, nuts, and seeds.
Yeah.
And that's a distinction, too, between a lot of people are familiar with the Atkins diet, which was the low-carb and the low-carb craze, which has come and gone in cycles and could be compromising to health when you restrict or eliminate the most nutritious foods on the planet are the plant foods, vegetables. So abundant servings of vegetables, a little bit of moderation or selectivity with fruit because we have so much prevalence of overly cultivated, overly sweetened fruit year-round, which is sort of not in line with our genes either. So we're saying all out on the vegetables, try to stay local, obviously, and have an eye toward organically grown or responsibly grown produce that has high antioxidant value, and that's kind of the basis for your diet rather than grains. So you add animal products, meat, eggs, things like that, and then you're on your way to primal living. And one of the best things about it is, even in a matter of a few days or a few meals, you'll notice the difference between a glucose spike meal and a meal that balances blood sugar naturally by moderating the insulin response.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. So one of the things that I guess I'm really fascinated with is, and you touched on it before about how we have a very busy lifestyle. Modern lifestyle is very stressful. How did the caveman, or how did the hunter-gatherer, what was their lifestyle like,
Oh, that's great. Thanks. Yeah, we have a chapter 2 in the Primal Blueprint is a contrast between Grok, that's our primal role model 10,000 years ago, the figurine that you see on the logo. That's Mark coined the nickname for him. And then the antithesis is a modern guy who's doing just about everything opposite, taking the prescription medication, eating a diet that's now estimated by Dr. Lauren Cordain to be, the modern diet is estimated to be 71% foreign to our genetic makeup. In other words, 71% of the calories we eat now were completely absent for 2 million years of the human diet and recently introduced either in the last 10,000 or in many cases in the last 100 years. So we've got to take a few steps back and notice, how we're trying to align with our genes and what we've been habitually doing. So, the fast-paced modern lifestyle, a huge contrast to hunter-gatherer, and they lived a life of leisure. I mean, it was rough. They had misfortune, and they had predator danger and all kinds of things that would horrify us now. But if you look at the statistics from modern hunter-gatherer societies, they spend, this is off the top of my head, but it's in the book, 4 or 5 hours a day procuring food, another couple hours on basic human needs like setting up their camp or however you want to describe that, and then several hours a day, 4 or 5 hours a day engaged in what the sociologists would call leisure time. So they're just hanging out in their clan, playing games, doing things that are entertaining and relaxing and stress relieving. And then, of course, once in a while, they'll have to go all out for a major stressful event, such as an incident or danger, a persistence hunt, like I mentioned earlier. And that's the kind of stress and rest balance that we're missing out now. And when I was an athlete, and if you have athletic listeners, endurance athletes, a really important transition that I had to make in my career, and this was with Mark's guidance too. He was my coach when I was racing on the professional circuit, and I was ranked third in the world, national champion in America in 1991. I had to transition from a chronic-based program where the goal was to get up every day and do something of worth and accomplishment to a program that focused more on the more severe fluctuation of the stress and rest balance. So on my big days, on my hard days, I'd go out there, and sure, I'd ride my bike for 100 miles in the high mountains of the Sierra Nevadas and put in some other workouts and be working very hard for 7-8 hours. And then my transition enabled me to improve as an athlete was the next couple of days I just kicked back and took it easy. And, I was a professional athlete, so I had the luxury of guiding my lifestyle and setting it up around my athletic goals. So I would sleep in till 10 a.m., and I would go get a massage, and I'd go to the cinema movie rental store and rent a few tapes and just sit back and watch tapes from the afternoon into the evening. So that was, as an athlete, it was a difficult concept to trust because you're competitive. You want to get out there. You want to accomplish something. You want to feel like you did a worthwhile endeavor with your day. But the balance of stress and rest is what we're missing in modern life. So that's an athletic example, but you have the corporate worker who's on the clock, who's busy with deadlines, who now is wired and connected all the time, which is wonderful. We don't want to go back to licking stamps and sending things by the post, but when you're always wired and you're always able to log on and sit down and engage your brain, it can and will lead to an overly stressful existence where you're not balancing stress with relaxation-producing endeavors.
Yep. That's
watching the hanging out, that kind of thing.
Yeah, very good insight. Very good insight. Thanks for that. Moving on to, I guess, a bit of a different topic here is what's your take on supplements for paleo?
Well, that's another good question, and the listeners should know that Mark Sisson, his company, Primal Nutrition, has been around for a long time. He's been in the supplement business for quite a long time, as have I, independently from Mark and working with him now. And so obviously supplements are a big part of healthy living, and particularly as an athlete, there was ways that food could not deliver a lot of the goals that were required for endurance athletes, such as getting calories on the go or while you're riding your bicycle 100 miles. You can't sit down and have a salad out there on the road. It's not going to work too well. So there's performance supplements, which is, I'd say, its own separate category for specialized needs that you have. And then there's dietary supplements, which are, it's sort of a nod to the realities of modern life. And I guess if you're on vacation at an all-inclusive resort where they're making organic meals and providing you with, exceptional nutritional value and all the food you can eat, and it's always at your disposal, and your life's in perfect balance because you're on vacation, extended vacation, then you're probably getting all your nutritional needs from your diet. And if you're anything short of that, if you're driving around in traffic or breathing smog while you're exercising, or having some shortcomings in your diet where you're ingesting food that is not good for your health and can actually compromise your digestive function. So just to take an isolated example, probiotic formulas are things that nourish healthy intestinal bacteria. Well, so do a lot of healthy foods, such as the yogurts and things like that. However, your intestinal bacteria can get compromised by sugar, alcohol, tobacco, lack of sleep, elevated stress hormones, all these kind of things. And when your gut starts to weaken, that's kind of the first line of defense for the body and your immune system function. So, that's a worthwhile supplement to consider taking. For example, after you've gone through a course of antibiotics for an illness. The antibiotics kill everything in your gut, and you're left sort of at a void, and you need to, kickstart the redevelopment of healthy intestinal bacteria. So that's one example of a supplement. Another one's, let's say, an omega-3 fish oil capsule, which is a popular supplement, because not a lot of us are consuming vast amounts of omega-3. If you're above the Arctic Circle in Finland and you're fishing every morning out in the lake, fish, sure, you probably have an exceptionally high level of omega-3 and don't need to pound a lot of capsules, but the rest of us really need to look at that, particularly the balance of omega-6 to omega-3. It's kind of becoming a hot topic lately. You can Google it and read some good stuff, but if you have a pro-inflammatory diet, which is one that's inclusive of grains, sugars, sweetened beverages, not enough of the good foods, you're going to have a high omega-6 value and deficient on omega-3s, which are basically oily cold water fish. Some other foods have moderate amounts, but nothing compares to eating sardines, wild-caught salmon, herring, mackerel, things like that. So if you're not powering that every day and you want to improve that pro-inflammatory condition, taking the omega-3 oil capsules are great. And, if this were a supplement show, we could go down the list and talk about various other ones, but that's sort of a long answer to
for sure.
Question.
For sure. Well, one of the questions regarding paleo, and I guess this is kind of an interesting question, there's a lot of talk about rotating food for allowing your digestion to remain optimal. Say, for example, having beef or chicken or fish every single day and only sticking, say, for example, having beef every single day, there's the argument that, you're wearing down the enzymes, for example. Can you give us your take on the importance of rotating foods, and, is it important, and, how would someone implement that in their lifestyle?
It's important if you think it is and if it makes you happy, and the number one goal of living primally is to enjoy life. And so whatever you think is right for you within the guidelines, the primal guidelines, so in the case of a dietary question like that, if you're eating meat, fish, fowl, eggs, vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds, you're going to be a big winner getting rid of grains, sugars, and sweetened beverages. So the rotating foods concept is entirely personal preference, and I'll say that, not being a medical professional, but the digestive system is pretty darn good at handling whatever you throw at it if it's, in genetic alignment with what we've been eating for 2 million years. If you're a creature of habit and you want to eat the same thing every day for the rest of your life, and it's a grass-fed, pasture-raised animal and some organic vegetables, and it's the same vegetable every single day or what have you, you're going to be a heck of a lot better off than someone who's rotating from the various fast food franchises in Sydney or whatever. So, the first step is to align your dietary habits with your genetic requirements for health, and that's the primal theme and the primal argument dating back 2 million years. And then the rest of it's personal preference with tremendous amount of flexibility. So there is no should when someone says, you should eat this food. If you like it and it tastes good, then go for it. Otherwise, you can steer yourself clear and do things that make you happy and that you'll be able to comply with over the long run.
Yeah. Do you think the caveman ate raw food?
I wouldn't have a qualified answer for that. I guess an anthropologist would have to know.
Yeah.
And that's a nice nuance to ponder and probably something interesting to look up and learn about. But what we're trying to do with this movement here, and this is particularly something that I have a passion for, is to make it amenable and interesting to the average person. And so, when Mark's lecturing or I'm lecturing and I get a question from the audience that's, an in-depth, thoughtful question about someone who's into it in an extreme manner, I even steer clear from answering because I want to always take it back to let's keep it simple, let's keep it fun. Let's make the people that are, into a progressive lifestyle role models for everyone else. And the more extreme you get and the more nuance you get, such as someone sitting down and saying, well, here's my food rotation schedule, and this really works for me. You have to go chicken, beef, fish, and then on the seventh you have a free day and you can eat whatever you want.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff is very disturbing to me because, book after book on the bestseller list, has gone into these gimmicks and hype and shortcuts, and I think it misses sight of the big picture, which is long-term sustainability, personal preference, enjoyment, and happiness as you proceed on a new path. And when that stuff's clicking, everything else is wonderful, and we can go have a potluck party, and people can rotate with whatever food tastes the best.
Yeah, that's a great answer, and I really like the way you want to make it easy for everyone to get involved and improve their health. So that's great that you're doing it like that. One of the other, I guess, paleo leaders, Dr. Ottobre, I remember him talking about something where he was saying about eating before a workout can actually alter gene expression, and the best time is to eat on an empty stomach. Have you come across any of this research or could comment on that?
Oh yeah, I remember that from your email, and I have read a bit about that and talked with Mark about that. And there is some belief that when you work out on an empty stomach and you're primal adapted, in other words, you're good at accessing and burning stored body fat, you might get a little bit of acceleration of burning fat. Whereas if you were to pop in an energy gel or what have you beforehand, your body would kick into burning that sugar as a preference. So, once you get down this road and you realize the freedom and the flexibility and the power that you have to no longer be, we could even say addicted, or on a softer word, reliant on ingested carbs to fuel your workouts or to fuel your busy morning at the office or whatever, then it's great. Intermittent fasting obviously has a really large following. People are really into that. They laud all kinds of health benefits. There's been a lot of studies with animals showing that the immune system is kicked into high gear when calories are restricted. And so I personally think it's a good practice to, not be obsessively regular with your meals and teach your body how to access and burn stored energy. So I do make a practice of doing intense workouts without having ingested calories to go on in recent, right before the workout. And I think it's sort of a benchmark or a measuring to see how primal adapted you are and how your program is working to show that you can do it. Because in contrast, before, like I said, I'd be dizzy and cranky at 10 a.m. if I didn't have a huge carbohydrate breakfast. And that's it's a disturbing thought to realize how misaligned that is with our history and our genetic requirements for what's the most healthy.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good way to look at it, is how primal adapted you are, and if you can do it. So, one of the things is paleo diets for children. Is there anything you would change or add to the diet or suggest?
Well, now we get really strongly into the personal preference, being aligned psychologically with what you're doing. And that's a big challenge because, unfortunately, children are socialized with sugar all around them and absorbed in it and basing their celebrations on it. And here in America, my kids, their fundraisers at their school are selling lollipops or selling frozen treats to pay for their field trips. And it's everywhere, and it's pervasive. And once you're socialized in a certain way, it's difficult to sit down and reason with a kid and say, hey, you could have early development of atherosclerosis if you keep going this way, so we're going to put you on a different diet than all your buddies and friends and your mates at school. So that's a big challenge, and I think what you have to do is involve them in the process, for one, so they get to go shopping, they get to learn a little bit about what's going on, they get to choose which of the foods, under the Primal guidelines they might want to try and get involved in the recipe thing and have choice and freedom. But as a parent or as an adult influence the diet of a child, you can create some natural boundaries. So I'm fighting, I would say, somewhat of a so-so battle with my kids because I don't want to socialize them in a regimented manner of what they can eat, but I will assert some sort of a guideline. For example, if they want a soda, it has to be in conjunction with after a sporting event or a practice. And so they grow to learn that, appreciate and understand that. And when they're coming off the football field or the basketball court, yeah, sure, we can go stop and get a beverage. And at that point, we should interject this also. When your muscle glycogen is depleted from heavy exercise, from intense exercise, and it does need to be restored and restocked with carbohydrate. And really, at that point, anything goes because your body converts everything into glucose. So if you're a primal person, you're working out hard, or you're really busy, or you're a young person still burning a lot of calories, and you want to go indulge yourself with a frozen yogurt, I don't know if that's popular down in Australia. It's kind of taken a comeback here in America, and they're popping up on every street corner. Those sugar calories are something that your body can adapt pretty well to if you're burning a lot of calories and emptying out your glycogen tank frequently. The problem is when you're already restocked, such as a sedentary person or an obsessive eater who's working out 12 hours a week but eating a ton of calories as a free license because they're a marathon runner or a triathlete, then if you have any excess body fat on you whatsoever, then you got to sit back and take a second look at your strategy and your approach to consuming calories and what food choices you have and what insulin production level is all about.
Yeah, definitely. So an interesting question for you is, where would you draw the line between modern life and Stone Age life, or the hunter-gatherer life, I should say?
Draw the line in what sense?
Like, I guess you kind of explained it before, but I just wanted to kind of hit it home for the listeners. And that is, basically, you said before about, it should always be fun. The line between, we can obviously get obsessive about, the paleo, the hunter-gatherer used to eat this way, and they used to, work this many hours, and they used to have this much time for leisure and all that type of thing. And, people, I think there's a lot of people, especially, I guess, in my community, and people who I speak to, like other trainers and that type of thing, who get a little bit, lack of a better word, obsessed about the whole paleo lifestyle and try and, basically make their whole life the way we used to live, say, 40,000 years ago. And where would you draw the line with that and modern lifestyle?
Right. They're walking to work in bare feet and the whole thing, right?
Yeah, basically.
That's a good question. The line's wherever you want to draw it, and I think it comes back to what are your goals and what do you want to get out of life? And one thing that occurs to me now, I'm 46 years old, and I'm starting to become, there's no other way to say it, but I'm gripped by fear about the health problems that are tragically occurring at an epidemic level, and people in my age group are already starting to hit it and feel it. And, everyone, just like Lance Armstrong parades around saying, everyone's been touched by cancer, everyone. And it's so tragic, and a lot of it's needless suffering because most of our diseases these days are lifestyle related. Some estimates go up to 80% of diseases that people we see in the hospital are lifestyle related and entirely preventable problems. So I want to nullify my risk factors down as low as I possibly can. Therefore, I use a seatbelt whenever I operate a vehicle. I don't text behind the wheel. And when it comes to diet and exercise habits, I don't want to be frivolous with my health in any way. So when you're weighing the importance of indulging in some way or maintaining an adverse lifestyle habit because you love the taste of bread or whatever it is, I think it's important to reflect on, the long-term consequences and the relative importance of the things you're doing with your life. So those people that are extreme paleo and walking to work barefoot and not wearing a coat in the winter or whatever their thing is, that turns them on, that's great. And if you want to dabble in this and tiptoe your way towards feeling better, having more energy, not feeling so burnt out at the end of days, I think the payoff is so fantastic that, and it's also so easy to implement and adapt. When we take exercise in a nutshell, what we're telling most people to do, most exercises, is slow down, take it easy, balance stress and rest more, do brief, intense sessions that I think are fun and exhilarating and over with quickly, rather than slogging on the road in the name of fitness or health, because you're basically compromising your health and your fitness when you're doing that. Yeah. You're going to get injured. You're going to get sick. You're going to get tired, all those things. So taking these lifestyle changes that are fun, painless, do not involve suffering, regimentation, or deprivation, and I think it's a very appealing route for just about everyone who can't give 100% score on every area of their life: stress management, body composition, athletic performance if they happen to have goals of that nature, general sense of happiness and well-being as we struggle to, adapt to, the PDA, the personal wireless model, has been around for only a decade, and it's changed my life dramatically, I would say. And, sometimes you think back, wow, what did I do before email and computers? And I'm telling my children in school, like when I was in college, they didn't have computers. We typed our papers up on a typewriter and all this kind of thing. You have to manage progress and do it in a way that, works for you.
The next question that I was going to ask is actually it's a Facebook question from Will. Will asked his question on saturated fats. He said Lauren Caldane seems to be fairly against saturated fats, yet more cavemen or primal people, for example, Marxists and the paleo movement, recommend more of a higher amount of saturated fat. What's your take on saturated fat?
Oh, I'd like to have a take that's not scientifically qualified, because I don't like to get into a battle of wits with people with egos and degrees and other things. Yeah. So again, I would say if you can ditch grains and sugars and then figure things out with personal preference from that point on. And saturated fat obviously has a lot of health benefits. We can find high quality sources of the fat from good animals, or we have unfortunately the predominance of animals produced by concentrated animal feed operations. They call it CAFO, and that's laden with hormones, pesticides, antibiotics, an adverse ratio of omega-6 fats to omega-3 fats because the animal's not eating a natural diet. It's sort of a grain-fed animal with the same health consequences as a grain-fed human. And so there's a hierarchy, or there's a continuum of choices in all the primal food categories where it's worth paying attention to. Once you make the important transitions and get the big picture handled, then it's time to look at, how high quality can I get my animal intake and skate some of those problems and those objections that vegetarians voice, or other people you mentioned that say you should moderate intake of this or stay away from this kind of thing, that kind of thing. Yeah. So that's a big one, is to try to find good quality local sources of animal products as well as vegetables, and kind of stay away from industrialized food, mass-produced, heavily transported food, things like that.
Yep, great answer. And the last question, I guess the question I was going to ask you isn't so much about food, but I really wanted to ask this question because obviously you've written a book about Tiger Woods and Lance Armstrong, how Tiger does it and how Lance does it. So tell me, how do people like Tiger and Lance, how do they do it?
Well, I don't think anybody knows exactly how Tiger did all that, but I think the reflection that I have from that is, some of the things that I noticed in the peak performance attributes of a champion athlete, that singular focus and that ability to turn off distractions and turn off the fluctuations of energy and motivation and spirit that happen in real life, and just turn it on the athletic, the competitive field. Being able to do that is a gift when it's time to tee off, but it's no guarantee of success or happiness in real life. And so that's one reflection that we can have at this point. But I think, especially Lance, who I spent a lot of time around and watched him in action, he was able to filter out things that would potentially distract him or turn into negatives or be discouraging, and keep that belief and keep that singular focus. And I think that's something that we can all tap into, and we all have the ability to. And one of my favorite takeaways from the Lance book and the experience of writing the book was his reminder of the importance that we have to maintain a choice over our attitudes. And so every day when we wake up, we can always choose a positive attitude. We always have that choice. No one can ever take it away from us, no matter what the outside circumstances are. And he showed that with his cancer diagnosis and staying positive, and even forming his foundation and giving back to the community while he was struggling for his own life is, the best character insight I can see about him. So we can all take those kind of lessons that the champions show us and apply them to, the relatively mundane issues that we face in real life, because everyone's facing those challenges, and everyone has a chance to own their own attitude.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful message. And, I really want to thank you, because a lot of the questions I asked you today, obviously I agree with pretty much everything you've said today, but I've asked you, I guess, the tough questions for the benefit of the listeners, so they can kind of, get it on a higher level, get what we're saying about the paleo lifestyle. And, closing up on that about what you just said then, having that singular focus doesn't always necessarily mean you're going to have success in life, and being more of a balanced person. I think that's definitely where it's at. And being an advocate of health, you can't neglect the mental side of things. You have to have a well-balanced life. And really want to thank you for taking your time out today. Where can people go to learn more about you?
I would say everybody should go to marksdailyapple.com and join the Primal community and the Primal movement. All kinds of fun things to read about there every single day. Connected to that is primalblueprint.com, where you can learn more about the book and the other products that we have. And but Mark's Daily Apple, it's free. You sign up, you get great information and a great community, the great forum, and it's a really good way to get started and stay aligned with this wonderful movement, is connect with other like-minded people around the world. And in our case, and thanks for getting in touch all the way from Australia. Pleasure to talk to you, Mark.
Yeah, absolutely. And your books, are your books available on Amazon, or are they available directly through your website?
Oh, they can look at bradkearns.com and see all that. Kearns is my last name.
Yeah, awesome.
Sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, and absolute pleasure having you on. I'm sure the listeners will give you heaps of great feedback.
All right, Mark. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
This podcast is proudly brought to you by MaximusMark.com and Enterprise Fitness. So there it is, folks, the Paleo Show. Please leave your comments below. Please subscribe to me on YouTube, and if you can leave a review, that would be fantastic. If you enjoy the show, do pass it on to your friends on Facebook, and do let your friends know that I am doing this show and trying to make the world of nutrition a better place. So I get to actually see, hear, or speak to you. Eat well, train hard, and supplement smart.